Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 132 of the longest tenured Denver Nuggets spin-off podcast in the world. Welcome to the DNVR Nuggets' Serbian Corner. My name is Miroslav, and before we begin, please let me remind you to like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the DNVR Sports YouTube channel and DNVR Nuggets podcast channel. The audio version is perfect for your commute or to make your office/home office time more bearable. If you want to support the show more directly, you can become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/MiroslavCuk, just like my Sicko tier supporters Peter Plummer and Daniel Lynch. Let's start with a weekly recap. We haven't seen each other in something like 9 days, so we have four games to briefly talk about. First, the Indiana game. The Nuggets showed they can win against a good team on the road. In this game, Joker broke his career high for assists in a game with 19. AG was bullying guys again and hitting shots on top of it. Mike had a double-double. Christian was finishing around the rim well again. Jamal made all of his threes. But Zeke Nagy stole the show. If I told you he would record 14 points in a game this season a month ago, you would have told me I was crazy, like nobody's business. The only hiccup in their offense was the turnovers. Without those, it would have been a blowout. A nice bounce back after being embarrassed by the Lakers last week. Next, Milwaukee game. The game started with the Joker's unbelievable off-the-bounce pass to Christian Braun in the middle of the paint in traffic, but CB didn't finish at the rim. And another pass with a lot of spin from Jamal Murray to CB again, without a field goal. Luckily, Joker had 16 points in the first quarter and kept the team ahead at the first break. The second quarter brought a lot of Jamal and Westbrook's solo actions while they played with Strotter, Nagy, and DeAndre Jordan. But even though that was a pretty bad eyesore for me, they were efficient enough to keep the lead until Joker returned to action. The third quarter brought us a brick fest from the Nuggets. Guys calling their number too often, so the Bucks got the lead without really working for it. For the rest of the game, Milwaukee was just shooting too well for the Nuggets to catch up, and the only detail I remember from that stage was Christian Braun posterizing Brook Lopez. Joker had a very average game, meaning a 30-point triple-double, although on supernatural efficiency. Jamal, Christian, and Strotter were passable. Gordon and Westbrook were missing a lot, and I have to think of a new word to describe how badly MPJ shot in this game. 5 of 22 happens from time to time, but not to elite shooters like Mike. I was honestly scared for his health at that point, but I think I was overreacting. Next, the Detroit game. Aaron Gordon was ruled out for this game due to an ankle injury, so the Nuggets did what they did all year. Played well short-handed. Zeke stepped into the starting lineup and only had 2 field goal attempts, but they were both threes and he made both. Not to mention, he played great on defense. Jamal and MPJ were on fire, combined for 59 points with 11 made threes on 16 shots. Christian was awesome, making everything through contact in transition. It was a good first quarter, a bad second one, a great third quarter, and that was enough for a blowout. Oh, and Joker had 23, 17, and 15, I guess. Lastly, Boston game. The Nuggets started the game sleepy. Nikola was the only player trying to score. Michael Porter tried to create an advantage against the Celtics defense and failed at it. In the first half, the home team insisted on leaving Russ and CB wide open, so MPJ and Jamal had a very low number of field goal attempts, and the paint was clogged for Jokić. In the second half, the Nuggets started playing much better defense, allowing way fewer three-point shots for Boston, and slowly clawed back into the game. The closest they came was a -3 with a couple of minutes to go, but they couldn't close the gap completely. Jamal had a great second half. CB, who played almost 47 minutes, was doing everything outside of hitting three-pointers. He was 2 of 8 from that area of the field. Zeke and Pickett looked good in limited minutes, and Julian was -18 in 14 minutes before injuring his leg. We're still waiting for hopefully good news on that. Okay, that's enough of an intro. My guest for today isn't really a guest. He is a guy I talk to when I try to get my basketball takes in check, but also for my beignet and sweet French toast cravings, not to mention my haiku training. It's my podcasting role model, Nick Hertzog.
Hey, buddy. I'm already looking forward to another round of Lucille's with you. And what it just coming up, right?
We need to
In a month?
we need to figure out how to make Lucille's the official sponsor of this show because yeah, I enjoy breakfast there so much. We should just make that cooperation official. Yeah, as you mentioned, in about 6 weeks I will be landing in Colorado, and coincidentally, in exactly 6 weeks, the Nuggets are going to start their 2025 playoff run. So that's how much time they have to get their shit together. What are your thoughts on these two historic events coming up?
One more than the other, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think there's flashes there of something great developing, I think. But it's not consistent right now, and I think that's been an issue all year, really. I think I want to blame the injuries a little bit. I feel like Aaron Gordon is so key to this team defensively, in particular, and he does open up some things from the dunker spot on offense too that are really valuable to them. But especially on defense, I feel like they really struggle in crunch time, in particular, when they need to get stops without him on the floor and the versatility that he provides defensively. And so, yeah, I'm having a hard time, like, I don't know, gauging where they're at when he's not totally available. Like, I feel like they really missed him in that Celtics game, which ended up being extremely competitive anyways. And in a tough road game, tough place to win. Boston also needed a win in that game, coming off a couple losses in a row. So, they were right there in the end. It's hard for me to not think Aaron Gordon pushes them over the top in that game, potentially. Maybe keeps the bleeding down in the first half a little bit, and then they don't have quite the hurdle to get over in the second half. And that's the class of the league you're talking about with the Celtics, right? Between the Celtics, OKC, and Cleveland. I mean, I think those are the three teams that the Nuggets are looking at that they would have to climb. So. I think they're right there, but they're not gelled yet. They haven't had a stretch where they've had all their guys healthy and playing well for a period of time yet that we can really gauge them, I think.
We'll be talking more about Boston's and Cleveland's of the world near the end of this show. But before that, the easiest way to do these shows is to go through players and talk the form and shape they are in at the moment, the Nuggets, I mean. But I decided to take the high road and torture you with my team construct takes, and we'll see where we get. So I've been very critical of the decisions Calvin Booth made this summer, particularly his decision to let KCP walk in free agency. Then the initial heat passed, and I was willing to wait and see what would happen at the trade deadline. And of course, since Booth already spent all of his positive trade assets this and last summer, nothing happened. The deadline passed, and this is the team for this April and hopefully May, maybe June. But then we discovered something else. Zeke can actually contribute playing at the power forward position, and Pickett can actually play well on both sides of the court.
Yeah.
And this is not on Calvin. This is on Malone, that it took 50 games for him to give a chance or put the player in a position to succeed. The Nuggets have a roster that has been put together awkwardly, but with a bunch of one-way guys. But then even that roster isn't optimized because of the Malone Booth arm wrestling competition. What are your thoughts on the Nuggets as a collective, and what are your expectations from them until June, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. KCP, I would say at this point, that move in particular, I think they made the right call. It's hard to say if they would have kept him. It would have strapped them financially in a way that I'm not sure would have been worth it.
Yeah, you're right.
With what they've gotten out of Christian Brown.
They would have lost all the flexibility they had this season,
Right, to actually do
with all the great moves they did afterwards.
No, I understand that.
Carry on, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. But he also just would have blocked Christian Brown, right? Like, and I feel like I like a lot of what we're getting from him and his game, and I think he's really much more of the future. So I'd rather see him playing more. Yeah, I mean, if KCP was on the team right now, though, I wouldn't like, I wouldn't have an issue with it for sure. And probably they would be marginally better at this point in the season. But yeah, in terms of the overall construction, I mean, I think it's really, a couple of things. If Najee is actually playable in the playoffs, which seemed like craziness, I wouldn't have imagined that even being possible. Obviously, like through the first part of this year, even at any point in the last couple of years. But I think we're seeing a hint that probably Malone doesn't trust him enough yet to roll him out in a playoff run. He didn't really play him I don't think he played him at all in the Celtics game, right? Or he played him briefly or something.
Briefly, yeah.
Even though they were shorthanded there, and that he had been playing him more consistently before that, and so it doesn't seem like he has Malone's trust yet. Pickett, again, also a guy that I don't know that he's going to have any trust in a playoff run yet. So really, what we're saying is, like, can we get enough out of Strother? Can Russ start consistently in a playoff series when we know teams are going to leave him on an island? Can he hit enough shots to make people pay? If he can't and he's coming off the bench, like, can there be a rotation that will work there? Because there's a good dynamic going with him with the starters right now too. But in the playoffs, he's going to get more exposed. So yeah, I think it's just kind of a matter of will MPJ hit his open threes and things like that. So the pieces are there. I don't know. It's like I think the potential is there for this to gel, but I think I hate to say it, it sounds like cliche or something. It was just kind of like a make or miss situation here. It's kind of like, I think if Russ hits threes and if MPJ hits threes in a playoff series and they're healthy and they lock in on defense, I think they can beat anybody. But those are maybe some big ifs at this point. I don't know.
You've opened a lot of good points, and I want to expand on all of them. And in order to be able to do so, let's take one short break first. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. So, Nick, Nikola Jokic is the ultimate floor raiser. We now know that even if he has like 50% of the salary cap in street clothes, like in 2022, he'll still take you to like 48, 49 wins. The Nuggets are now on pace for 52, 53 wins, which is not that much more than 48, 49. Granted, with a lot of guys jumping in and out of the lineup for the whole season because of injuries. Do you think the Nuggets front offices, so plural, I'm talking about the Tim Connolly era here too, rely on Nikola that he'll get them to playoffs even with cost-cutting moves that make them look good in the eyes of the KSC or the owners group because they're saving their money?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. They've shown a willingness to pay their guys, right? I mean, they extended Murray. They extended Gordon. MPJ's probably next. We'll see what happens. It'll probably be this offseason, I think, right? For that.
I think he has one more season before the extension.
Okay. But they gave him one already. I mean, I think so. I don't know that it's like an unwillingness to spend money to keep the core together. I've said this before, but I like, at least in terms of philosophy, I think I agree with Booth's idea of trying to build young talent around this core, so that they don't get trapped into just kind of this rotating group of like vets that are older and maybe getting washed up and might get them a little more, their hand tied behind their back a little bit more with salary and stuff. But those guys, but that all hinges on these guys panning out, the young guys, I think. So, and like you said, Jokic is such a floor raiser that, maybe some of these young guys are looking better playing alongside Jokic than they actually are. And maybe that will get exposed now, as we go through the next 2-3 years of championship runs. They may just not have enough talent now. And that obviously will be the case if Murray regresses. It seems like Murray is back to something much closer to what he was when they won the championship, I think. Although still some inconsistency there, but I mean, I think he's definitely gotten better the last month or two. So, yeah, I don't. It's tough with a player like Jokic. I mean, this is like could you say like, well, did Cleveland like put too much on LeBron or something in those? It's like, well, I mean, the whole team, like these certain players are so vital to the offense, and that everything runs through them in a way that they do have to sort of be the focal point of everything. And then it is about like kind of finding these pieces that fit around them, and the Nuggets have had success. Obviously, they've won a championship with this core, so it's tough to like want to make any kind of dramatic moves there. But then if you have a guy like Murray or a guy like MPJ that like starts to regress a little bit, if that's, to the extent that that's happened maybe earlier this year, I don't know about so much right now, although MPJ's shot has been kind of come and gone this year. Then yeah, it's tough. It's tough for the organization to make a big sweeping change. I think some big trade of one of those core players, which could seem kind of knee jerk.
Yeah, the Nuggets during this whole 10 years of Jokic Malone era, they have been willing to pay their guys. In the first 6 seasons, I want to say maybe 5 seasons, they were willing to be paying up to the salary floor. If you remember, at one point they signed Roy Hibbert or traded for Roy Hibbert just to be able to reach the salary floor and
Right.
not pay penalties for having too cheap of a team. But I digress. That was a long time ago. After that, they did pay all of the Jokic, Murray, and MPJ, and they traded for Aaron Gordon and paid him accordingly. And even today, you can say they're paying all of those guys, but that's just 4 guys. They have 4 guys with big contracts. They have Zeke Naji, and then they have a bunch of rookie scale contracts, and Dario Saric, who is like the only guy above the minimum level. So they
Money well spent there, by the way.
They did not choose to go the path of Boston.
I blame
Celtics.
you on that one also, for the record.
Yeah, we can have an extended discussion on Dario later in the season when it's closer to playoffs. When I'm gonna be start reaching for some new guys in the rotation if things go south. But kidding aside, they took this path of not paying KCP so they wouldn't go over the second apron and keep flexibility, which they didn't use because they had no trade assets to use it with. So it's kind of a really annoying conundrum for me. If they had KCP right now, they would have one more reliable guy on the roster who wouldn't necessarily have to block Christian Brown. But also Christian Brown plays without Joker really well. Of course, he's better with Joker, but he is one of the rare guys whose like true shooting percentages do not drop when Joker is not on the court. He is very reliable guy because he's mostly dunking. Don't get me wrong. He's not like doing anything crazy with the ball, but he is still very, very efficient and very useful without Joker. And then you would save what used to be the geometry of the court the Nuggets had with Murray, Porter, and KCP spreading the court out, with AG being in a dunker spot, and then Joker just sending pass above all defense with ease, and just dissecting everybody like they did in 2023. Now, yeah, everybody will point out that KCP is not having a great season this season. Of course he's not. He's not playing with Joker anymore. So of course he's not having the greatest of seasons. I'm glad he got paid at least. So yeah, that's my thing there.
Yeah,
with losing KCP.
I'm thinking about this though. If you put KCP back on this team, like, I mean, you're probably going to start him, right? So now you're talking Christian Brown and Russ off the bench. It's doable, but I mean, we've gotten like such great.
It would be a crazy bench. It would be bench of Russ and Christian Brown and like Michael Porter, Zeke Nagy, and DeAndre Jordan, like a crazy lineup, like where everybody plays hard and physical, and you hope to just hunt transition with a lineup like that. One thing I hate is when we now have all of Christian and Russ and Jamal on the court at the same time, because Christian and Russ can work well together only if team is playing a lot of transition play, and for that you need to have great defense, and you can't have great defense if you have Jamal Murray as a target on your defense. Now, granted, Denver was pretty lucky against Boston because Boston, even though they're really supremely talented, have really bad decision makers in Tatum and Brown. So they both try to isolate Jamal and shoot fadeaway,
Yeah, I feel like Jaylen Brown shot about 10 fadeaway jump shots in that game.
He did, yeah. They played terrible offense and they still won because Denver was too bad in that first quarter. So
they went like 15 for 20 from 3 in the first half or something. It wasn't that bad.
My biggest problem with the composition of the team right now is the Nuggets do have 6 starters, as Calvin Booth mentioned in recent presser. Problem is those 6 guys, when you have all of them ready to play and you have to play heavy minutes, all 6 of them, they just don't mesh well together. You have too many non-shooters among those 6. You have Jamal Murray and Michael Porter, who are great shooters. Then you have Jokic and AG, who are not shooters. They're shooting high percentages, but they're not shooters. They're not the guys who are spreading the court. And then you have Russ and CB, who can be completely ignored in certain lineups, and thus clogging the paint and stuff like that. So this is also one of the reasons why they needed KCP back, because he would alleviate, if that's the right word, the problem the Nuggets have with spacing among their top guys right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I guess it's water under the bridge at this point.
No, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I love. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking back to the T-Wolves series last year, to where KCP got to a point where he was almost unplayable in that series, and I don't know. Now that was a specific matchup, and the Wolves are not really their problem this year. It's gonna be OKC. It's gonna maybe be the Lakers now. Unfortunately, we'll see how that pans out. And so I kind of like Christian Brown in some of those matchups, but he's not the reliable knockdown shooter that KCP was, the floor spacer. But he does bring this element of slashing and dunking and transition game that I think is superior to KCP. So it's just it's a different mix, I guess, right now with him over KCP. And I agree with you that when Russ is in there too, the shooting just isn't there. So I'm not sure what to do with that. I don't know if you don't want to have, maybe it's something like not having CB and Russ together on the floor at the same time. Then maybe there's some kind of rotation mix there. It's not yet. I think this is the problem with the roster right now, is like, I don't know that there is a perfect solution to the rotation, but that may, in the playoffs, that may, like, it I think it's just going to be largely matchup dependent, and so we'll have to see that could be to their strength potentially, because it might mean that they can play different kinds of styles of basketball in a way that maybe other teams aren't as suited to. Like I don't think the Celtics are quite as flexible in the way that they play.
We have a Jason Tatum fan in the chat I have to address because Mike Weisberg mentions that JT is an incredible decision maker. This is how I would put it. Jason Tatum is an amazing hooper. He is a guy who is so talented. He can do everything on offense and on defense. He is incredible. And he is a top 5 MVP candidate every year. And the reason why he is not a top 2 MVP candidate every year is because he is a terrible decision maker. His late game execution is horrible. Like the step back threes he's taking instead of doing something more efficient is not great. Decision making, and I will never change my stance on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just from my standpoint as a Nuggets fan, every time Tatum is taking a 3 from 3 feet behind the line, I'm happy.
Of course,
I'm like, sweet, yeah, keep chucking him, dude.
Yeah,
because he's so athletic. He should
make
be getting
20% of those. Yeah, that's great.
I think it's actually a weak. I think the Celtics fall way too in love with the 3-point shot. Way too in love with it. And they would be so much better if they mixed up their offense more.
It's the reason why the Nuggets were able to get back into the game. They were down like 18 in the first half.
No, you could say like they were down by 18 because Boston was making so many threes too in the first half. But that's the kind of thing. If you play that style, you're going to live by it and you're going to die by it. And there's just going to be games in the playoffs, especially when things get tight in the playoffs. This has been an Achilles heel for them before.
But they
the shot just stops falling, and then you don't have anything else to go back to.
The Nuggets also went down in that game because they were playing in the mud. They had 2 guys completely ignored in the corners. They had the paint packed, and they had Jamal Murray, who was completely invisible in the first half, even though he had all the space needed to operate because all of the Celtics defense was concentrated on Joker. But it was what it was. He came up great in the second half, so it was a pretty good game by Jamal, all in all.
Yeah, his second half was really good. But yeah, and that matchup. I mean, I don't know. Like if the Nuggets were to get to the finals and see the Celtics there, it's probably a 50-50 toss up to me at that. I'd have to see like how that even played out, or what, how the styles that are being played probably after the first couple of games. But I think the Nuggets are right there with them. I don't think the Celtics are like clearly like head and shoulders ahead of the Nuggets.
Keep that thought for the end of the show, because we're going to talk more about that. So let's take one more short break, and after that we're going to talk a bit about Michael Malone. Don't go anywhere. So Nick, I've been in Michael Malone's corner all this season, shouting him out for being more creative with the lineups and not sticking to bad ones for too long like he used to do in prior seasons. This good grace for me expired as soon as we got evidence that Zeke, in fact, can look awesome at the right position, and also that Jalen Pickett was unrightfully glued to the bench for a season and a half. How much of a benefit of the doubt do you think Michael Malone got for having Nikola Jokić healthy and unstoppable all these years?
Yeah, for sure. Jokic has got to be like the ultimate, like, cover your mistakes CYA guy for a coach. I mean, you can just roll him out there without much of a game plan at all, I'm sure, and you're gonna have a pretty good chance to win. You're right about so I guess something I don't know is, are we seeing Zeke look playable now because of work that's been done with him to get him to this point, that it's taken a few years to build him up to this point? Or was Malone just stubbornly holding him back, because he just doesn't like playing young guys or whatever, and like Zeke could have been contributing for the last couple of years like this? I don't know the answer to that. It could be a little column A, little column B, maybe. It does seem like, though, Zeke does fit. He has the profile of a type of player that would fit ideally with what they need off the bench. He's kind of athletic guy. He can shoot a little bit. He should be able to be a good rebounder in theory. He seems fairly athletic. So it seems weird that they haven't given him more run. Just even if he's sucking, I don't know why not. Take some of these games in the first couple of months of every season, the last 2-3 years, and just play him a bunch. And they haven't done that. And I don't know. So I don't know what they're seeing like in practice or whatever that kept Malone from doing that, or if it was just stubbornness. I mean, if it was just stubbornness or something, or just like, well, I'm just not playing him until he like earns his way onto the court somehow. I don't know. That seems a little short-sighted to me.
Zeke was so horrible at the 5 in his complete tenure with the Nuggets, but playing at the 4 next to DeAndre Jordan. And by the way, we don't know if he could be a good 4 next to Aaron Gordon, for instance. That would be a legit question for the playoffs. If you can get away with AG at the 5 and Zeke at the 4 and still, keep the high defensive level from those two, what would the rebounding numbers look like
You bring
in that
Watson
kind
back?
of situation?
That's a lot of athleticism. I mean, you could even play MPJ on it. MPJ, Watson, Z. I mean, that's a really long athletic bench unit.
Yeah, and we didn't get a chance to see that for years because Michael Malone was insisting on playing Zeke at the 5 and 0 seconds next to Nikola Jokic. And of course, Zeke's confidence looked shattered next to everybody else on the team who had a chance. Like, who were the 2 guys not playing with Joker in this entire season? It's Zeke, it's Dario, and it's DJ. And for some reason, DJ is having his, I guess, 3rd youth, not the 2nd one. That was like 5 years ago. So, yeah, DJ is just playing really well for what he can give you at the moment. He's not the quickest guy anymore, but he is still so physical and so strong, and he can rebound as hell. So yeah, I'm really glad DJ is there, but you know that you will not be able to count on DJ in more than like a couple of playoff games. I'm guessing, like the previous seasons. So you need to get different kinds of combinations of the bigs, and you know that Calvin Booth mentioned that they were trying to get another big in the trade deadline, and they already had Zeke. Like, I'm really glad they didn't get a Chris Boucher now, because I don't think he would be better than this version.
Yeah, maybe not.
Of Zeke.
The other thing too we got to remember is, and I just to give Booth a little bit of credit here, like Holmes was probably supposed to be a contributor, pretty quickly, and to not have him at all this year, I think that was part of the plan. He clearly believed in Holmes. I mean, what did he give up? 2-3 second rounders or something to move up to both spots to take him. So I think that, what they saw something in him where I think they thought he could really contribute like quickly this year, and so to lose that guy, I think, maybe threw some things off that they had planned.
I mean, it's bad luck with Holmes. Even if it wasn't the plan for him to play a lot this season, he would be much more ready next season, and now we have to wait for that gap year.
Which now maybe there's a criticism. Like, I was throwing out trade ideas that were including Holmes because, like, if you can find some other teams in the league that actually valued him, maybe you could have explored some kind of deal with a team that was a little further away, and trying to dump him this year while he rehabs and get somebody who could contribute to a run this year. But I don't know. I just don't know what would have been available there if he had any value at all in the trade market.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a couple of minutes on Michael Malone, and I had this long-lasting frustration that I put to the side because he won a championship with the Nuggets, and he has his back from Joker and Jamal, Aaron Gordon, his main guys. So that's really important in the NBA. But when you have such a long history of bigs off the bench being super unsuccessful on your team, there must be something about you too. Like, they had Isaiah Hartenstein, who was showing signs of really nice, playmaking and rebounding and defense while he was on the Nuggets, and he had no chance of succeeding at all. I don't know about Thomas Bryant. That's probably like a 50-50 kind of story. He was looking really, really swell on the Lakers before he came to the Nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
But after the Nuggets, he didn't have a great career after. So I don't know what was about that. But in reality, in 10 years, outside of Mason Plumlee, I guess, he never had a guy he trusted and a guy that looked good on the bench for the Nuggets.
Yeah, I think Isaiah Hartenstein I think is maybe the most telling example here of what sort of went wrong there. Why was he not able to utilize him to the point that he's a pretty highly paid contributor on a championship contender. So I'm also thinking, wasn't Trey Lyles was on a Michael Malone team too, wasn't he? And he's been a pretty good player for the Kings.
Yeah.
So that was another guy that got buried on the bench and didn't seem like they could really develop him. And I remember being glad when the Nuggets got rid of him. I thought he was horrible on the Nuggets, but
he was actually playing a lot of minutes, but he was just bad.
Yeah, he was not good.
Nuggets. He was like one of the rare guys who would lower Joker's numbers while he was on the court at the same time.
But
and that's a bad barometer.
But it does make you wonder when guys like that leave and then they develop into good, useful players elsewhere. It could have just been fit. It could have been, but fit with Jokic. I mean, I don't like if you can't fit with Jokic. I'm not really sure how some other role is gonna be beneficial to you. So it does kind of make you wonder if it's just something with the way they're developing these guys on the bench, and it maybe just do you think it's a focus thing for Malone? Do you think he just doesn't maybe put in the work with the bench or with young guys that he should, or he's maybe I don't know, outsourcing too much of that to?
I'm trying to figure it out because for some reason DJ was the only 5 that worked in the last.
But he was already
season
he was already a long career. He wasn't a young guy that was developed though.
Yeah. No. What I want to say is DJ is a huge guy, and Malone seems to be pretty traditional to me. He needs that huge guy on the court. But on the other side, he was constantly trying to play small off the bench, and that was really unsuccessful. Like he was usually playing 2 power forwards next to each other, and that was always an ugly look.
Mm-hmm.
The only exception to that rule was Aaron Gordon at the 5 in the 2023 playoffs. But Aaron Gordon is just he is a guy who's going to earn 30 million per year starting not next season but the season after that, and he's completely earned that. He's a great player. So yeah, I don't know what the issue is, but he was pushing for the small lineups. He was pushing for the 3-guard lineups off the bench, 2 power forwards, and it just never worked. And it's something to think about at least. And I don't know, maybe we'll see some more thinking at this final stretch.
I mean, there will be a point. I think if they disappoint in the playoffs this year, I think Malone's name starts to be discussed a little bit as being a place you make a move because they don't have a lot of flexibility on the roster. Maybe they could trade like MPJ. That's kind of probably the only player you could really consider. Maybe Murray, but I don't think that's likely either. So yeah, I mean, then if you have a couple disappointing years with a roster that you think is championship ready, it does make you maybe make you look at the coach. But yeah, it's a tough call because then who you're going to bring in, and a lot of times the grass looks greener on the other side, right? And then you make a change like this, and maybe it doesn't help. I mean, I don't think it's helped the Bucks, for example. So
yeah, I don't want to go into all the blame game.
Yeah,
like,
right.
If the Nuggets are not successful this season, who should be?
They could win the championship this year for all we know. So like,
yeah, I mean, it's in the realm of possibility for sure, and we'll try to figure out why is that, but that will be behind this short ad break. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so yeah, I mentioned about the blame game. The last season was called a gap gap season after the championship. They needed to restructure their roster, whatever. Lost Christian Brown's, Bruce Brown, stuff like that. But if they, don't have a good playoffs this season, is again, I will not call that a second gap year. I'm going to call that a failure. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I wanted to
we get to
if we get to it. So I wanted to play a little fun game from your old show, The Dig, that is called "Are We Sure?" And I have a couple of "Are We Sures" for you, and let's try to go through them. So my guy, Adam Mares' take on this season's team is that it has the potential to become great, as you mentioned just now. We just haven't seen it its best yet. Are we sure that what walks like a duck and talks like a duck isn't just a duck?
So the duck would be? Are they just not there yet?
The duck is a team that's constantly losing to good teams.
Yeah.
In huge percentage of games this season. Under 500 against the 500 or better teams.
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's essentially what I was saying early in the show, was that I think that they've shown flashes of greatness, but that it hasn't consistently come together this year yet. So I think if I was like betting my mortgage on it, I probably would bet on them underperforming in this year's playoff run. I think that's probably more likely. The reason that I struggle or hesitate to just say it's probably not going to happen this year is Jokic. He's so good, he's so dominant, he's better this year than he's ever been. And when you have a player like him that is clearly the best player in the world, and not only the best player in the world, but somebody who makes everybody else so much better around him, in the way that only a handful of guys in NBA history ever have, like LeBron, people like that. It's really hard to count those people out. I mean, think about the championship that LeBron won with the Cavaliers. He had no business winning that year, right? They were not the best team in the league that year, and he just willed them, to victory over a superior Golden State team. So,
I mean,
we could
he
see
did
something
have
similar.
Kyrie Irving on that team.
Yeah, they had a bunch of injuries too that year, didn't they? Even in that playoff run. Yeah, I'm not saying they were terrible, but I don't. Well, I mean, maybe they were better than I'm giving them credit for right now. But I thought Golden State was clearly.
Kyrie Irving on that team was probably better than any teammate Joker ever had in his career.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. I'm just saying that I think I've seen cases where, a single player's greatness has been enough to carry a team to achieve some things, or bring some guys up to their level and achieve some things that maybe they shouldn't have been able to do. And the fact that this group has already won a championship is an indication to me that they know what it takes to win one. They know the kind of level they have to get to in that as a core unit. And I think they can. I mean, I think they were actually closer last year than we remember, because that Timberwolves series was so frustrating. And but they were. I mean, if they just hold on to that lead in Game 7, I think there's a good chance they win it last year. So maybe not. They might have lost in the finals. I think they probably would have gotten to the finals though. Now we can't. I don't know. We can't rewind history, so it's hard to say for sure. But that to me is the thing where I really have a hard time writing them off while Jokic is still ascending, and while they're at the position that they're at now, with a bunch of guys who have played very inconsistently, who are capable of playing much better over a stretch of 15 games or 16 games. So
the reason I struggle seeing the Nuggets taking a leap in the final stretch and in the playoffs is because and I agree with you, Jamal looks really good since New Year's. He's been horrific before New Year's. he has been really good since, and he's been better like week by week. He looks really good. The reason I am struggling to see them be better is because I've seen games where Jamal was good and they still weren't really close to beating a good team. Like we've had those kind of games already. And in 2023, when Jamal clicked, nobody was stopping that team. And I don't feel
So where's
we
the
have
weak
the
point, do you
same
think?
kind of magic. The geometry of the team.
Just
Because
yeah.
the teams can overload on Joker so much easier than when the team had KCP on the team. It's so hard when the best thing you can pull out of the possession is a wide open Christian Brown corner three. He's gonna make probably, I don't know what are the numbers, like 40% if he's wide open, like 31% if he is slightly contested. The problem there is he's not a willing 3-point shooter. He's not loving the fact that he's shooting that shot. He would rather go into a dribble and pass the ball to somebody else, and stuff like that. Or even worse, if it's Russell Westbrook in the corner in that position. So it's difficult. Russ will make 2 threes in a row like it's nothing, and then he'll airball the ball by overshooting by 3 feet.
Right.
Like I never seen that on an NBA player before. So that's the reason I struggle there. Mike is struggling against physical teams again. Nothing changed there. It was actually funny to me. I was listening to some national guys talking about the Nuggets after the Lakers loss, and somebody in the ESPN studio said, like, Michael Porter Jr. is not the same player anymore like he was in 2023. No, man, you just haven't watched him since the last Lakers game, because Mike is the same player always, and the Lakers just became a bit more physical than they used to be in the previous 2 seasons, and that's why Mike wasn't great against them like he was before. Like he was murdering the Lakers before, because Lakers were just too soft on the outside. So that's the reason why I'm struggling to see it. And of course, I'm hoping I'm wrong, of course.
Yeah, so if I told you that in the playoffs this year, Christian Brown will hit 2.5 threes on 45% shooting, would you predict that the Nuggets go far?
You know what my problem there is? I'm afraid. Yeah, he might hit 2.5 threes. I'm afraid it's gonna be on like 8 or 9 attempts, because the teams are gonna dare him to shoot a lot. And Christian is a 37% 3-point shooter this season, but that's because he's shooting fewer than three pointers per game.
And he gets so many wide open ones.
he's only taking the wide open ones.
Yeah.
And if the team start overloading on Joker, he's gonna have so many wide open threes, and the Nuggets are gonna have to figure it out. Because and I don't know how they can figure it out, because the only shooter of the bench you have is Julian Strother. And by the way, we don't know what is his condition right now with his injury. But I just don't trust Julian in playoffs environment. I'm afraid he's going to be such an incredibly stark target on defense.
Yeah, I agree.
It's going to fall like a house of cards. So that's the big issue. Like, unless they figure out a way to like bully everybody in the paint, like
you have winning.
You have 3 guys there. We'll have 3 guys there as well.
Well, and like this, I think there are certain matchups that they can probably. I think they can run such an efficient offense, shooting a relatively low amount of threes for today's game, that they could actually win a series or 2 against the right opponents.
Oh, sure.
Not sure that that's not going to work against the top.
Oh, I fully expect them to win the first round series against any team. What I'm afraid of are the teams in the second round, like the Thunder, like the Lakers. And I guess we should go to the second, are we sure?
Oh, yeah.
To talk about that. So this is the counter question to the first one. So, which Nuggets opponents made you feel hopeless this season? For instance, Boston, as good as they are, as I mentioned, they still have Jason Tatum and his late game decisions at their helms. If you can just keep it close against them for long enough, the Bucks are far from impressive despite beating us in that last matchup. OKC only has SGA as an elite playmaker, and most of those plays are for himself anyway. Are we sure it isn't our ability to spot problems on other teams too that is our biggest cause of optimism?
Our biggest cause of optimism, because
because we are pointing out stuff about other teams that are flawed. Every team is flawed. There are no perfect teams, I guess. And are we basing our optimism on the fact that we are smart enough to realize everybody's flaws?
Maybe, maybe some player fans are. I don't think the optimism that I just expressed revolves around Jokic's greatness. So to me, that's not really about other teams. I don't think there's anything that other teams can do about him when he's well, he always plays great.
When he have space to operate.
But when he has space to operate, exactly. And even when he doesn't, I mean, he can still be a really effective force. But but yeah, I mean, there's always this danger when you're a fan, right? That you're sort of blind to your own flaws in some cases, and maybe you amplify the flaws and things you see on other teams. I think, I don't know, for me personally, I kind of feel like Nuggets fans tend to do the opposite as a group. I kind of think we're pretty critical of our team, because I mean, only until fairly recently have we ever been competitive consistently like this. So I think there's still like this imposter syndrome. At least I feel that. I don't know if other Nuggets fans feel that way, but I feel like there is always this sense of like, oh man, did we steal a championship? Like, are we really just like phonies here? Do we just have one great player and we just kind of got lucky one year? I mean, it's funny going from after winning that championship, it seemed like the Nuggets could really have a dynasty developing, to now being like, yeah, if we went out in the first or second round this year, the mood might totally change to like, oh, it was like a scam championship or something. We're a bunch of phonies. That would also be a wild overreaction, obviously. They were really great the year they won, and Jokic has just been an all-time great player. So that we're not overselling that aspect of it, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues, other than with the Celtics, I think with OKC and Cleveland, we just haven't seen them put it together to like be a dominant championship winning team yet either. So for me, there's just some question. It's kind of like there's a bunch of very interesting storylines developing this year, and obviously Luka on the Lakers now is fascinating, and we'll see how that works in the playoffs. And they still have some weird roster construction issues of their own. I don't think that's us like being overly critical of the Lakers unfairly or something like that. They have a weird team now. Trade. I mean, they'll get it fixed this offseason, but for this playoff run, it's going to be a weird endeavor for them. So, yeah, I think it's kind of a show me story this year, and I think it's going to come down to like, can the Nuggets get back to something close to what they had in 2023? Can Christian Brown replicate something closer to what KCP gave them on the offensive side? Can he consistently punish teams when he gets wide open threes? And can they play sound enough defense against really talented offensive teams like OKC? That I don't think they had quite that challenge from in their first championship run. And so those are the kind of this. But in time, can OKC, when the pressure starts getting amped up, I mean, if they're playing him in the Western Conference Finals, like is OKC gonna be able to respond when their threes aren't dropping? Because that inevitably happens. So
I've spent the past hour talking about how flawed the Nuggets are, but at the same time, there's only one team I have no hope against, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland outmatched us so horrifically, impressively, that I felt we had no chance against them. And granted, that was earlier in the season when Jamal was still pretty bad, but I just don't see a way to play against that team. Boston, for some reason, Denver always played well against Boston, and they almost had them this last time, even though they were in this deep pit. We're gonna learn a lot about the Nuggets in the 2 games against OKC. We're gonna have relatively soon. They're gonna be back to back, I think, back to back games against OKC, which is pretty crazy, and we're gonna learn stuff there. They're just a team that haven't done it yet. So even though they have such a great record and they've played so good against so many good teams, I still kind of need to see them beating the Nuggets in 7-game series. And yeah, that's about it. The Lakers.
There's also the injury factor here too. I mean, we have
of course.
There's always these like wild card things that can happen. So
yeah, and the Lakers are scary. Lakers with Luka and LeBron are scary. LeBron started playing like real basketball recently, and Luka is Luka. Luka is always going to be top 2 player in the league in my mind. So
well, he didn't have the right archetype for the Dallas Mavericks. You know, they were looking for a
yeah. They wanted
the AD archetype,
a gym rat. They wanted a gym rat. Yeah, you know.
They're much better off now. I'm sure.
Somebody from Kentucky, you know, like not the Slovenian kid. Like, yeah, I get it.
So ridiculous.
I mean, I feel sorry for the Dallas fans.
I do too, but just one of the most eye-crossingly stupid things I've ever seen in sports. Just unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
You just must have to think that it's not a sports-related decision, because nobody's that stupid. I'm not buying that Nico Harrison is that dumb. Like, he is a guy on a task. Like, there's no way he is that dumb. I'm not buying it.
I feel like there's a lot of things happening in the world right now where it's you can't be sure if it's the most incompetent thing you've ever seen or if it's actual like villainy. But, yeah.
The most incompetent thing that week.
It's either incredible stupidity or it's like literal evil is happening in the world. Yeah, it's one of the two, and neither is a great option.
You know what? Every time we start talking on or off the air, we always close with this. Like we always get to this point in our conversation, and I have to figure out a way to award my Patreons and give them an extra hour of 2 of us just rambling.
Why do you want to lose patrons? Or
well, you're right. You might be right. You might be right. It might get too heavy at some point. Okay, that's gonna do it for today's show. Nick, thank you so much for jumping in on the show on a very short notice, because I wasn't sure I was gonna be able to pull off a show today. And that is all I've prepared for you this week, my dear listener. And please, with the cherry on top, take the word prepared very loosely. By the way, there's going to be another show on Saturday with Dan Favale. So we're going to have a really quick turnaround after this show. Be well, be safe, be kind to everybody. Call your mom. And until next week, Bryn Forbes.